Hey mages, welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at the top tier meta decks currently being played in Bloomburrow Standard. These are going to be the best of 3 decks. So if you don't play best of 3 and we got a lot of new players that are coming to the channel and to the game as well, best of 3 is where you're playing a deck that will have its main board of 60 cards and 15 cards in the sideboard. Now after the first game you may be wanting to bring in certain cards, which is why you have sideboards for those of you who don't know, but if you play paper magic and you've gone to a lot of stores, that you would know best of 3 is the way that you play. Now these decks are all sourced by look around on the internet, sites like Untapped GG and places like EtherHub and places like that, looking for the top decks in the meta that are getting really good percentages, that the players are playing in Mythic and that players are playing to get to Mythic as well. So we've got 5 decks for you here today. Don't forget, if you enjoy the content, I do lots of budget content, lots of meta content as well, and I will be doing some gameplay content, which is actually going to be the next video. Don't forget, best way to support me and the channel is by hitting that subscribe button, watching videos to the end, liking the videos and commenting. And if you want to go that extra bit further, you can become a Patreon. Thank you very much if you do that. The names are flashing up on the screen of the people that are. I appreciate all of you that do watch the videos. And if you want to get any of these cards and take one of these decks to your next F&M, check out Cardmarket where you can get all your card needs. But without further ado, let's take a look at today's first deck. So the first deck that we are looking at, and they're in no particular order, there's not one best one out of this, they're all tier 1 decks, is Rakdos Lizards. A deck that I've come across a few times in the best of 1 regions as well, and it was a deck when I just recently did the best of 1 meta, people did ask about Lizards. It definitely is a top deck, but in best of 3 it's definitely a tier 1 deck. I think it's teetering on tier 1 in best of 1 as well. It's a very good deck and it runs around Lizards. So as you can see, I am missing a few cards here, so it's going to be hard for me to test, but looking at the stats on this, it certainly would be a card that a deck that I think would be, very interesting to play. One of the main protagonists of the deck is Gev Scaled Scorch. This is a 2 mana. It's a very low costing aggro deck, this one, as you can see from the amount of 2 drops in there and 1 drops as well. This has a brilliant ward of paying 2 life, which helps against aggro deck where opponents want to remove it, they're going to have to cost them life. Other creatures you control that enter with an additional 1/1 counter for each opponent who lost life this turn. So you're going to be having stars that come in and lands that will trigger this, and whenever you cast a lizard spell, this deals 1 damage to target opponent. So it triggers from itself as well, and it is a real aggressive aggro deck. When you look at some of the other cards that we do have in the deck as well, Vine Flasher has the landfall effect on this, that whenever you play a land, it will deal 1 damage to opponents, so you're triggering everything you can with Gev and just doing lots of damage and getting creatures come in with those extra counters. High Claw does the same. Whenever you attack with 1 or more lizard, it will deal 1 damage to target opponent. So timing of your cards when you're playing them and putting them in after the damage has been dealt is what you want to be doing to get the original counter on there. You can also pay 2 on this and put a 1/1 counter on this at the end of obviously doing the damage, and then, but you can only activate this once, but get a 1/1 counter, so slowly will build up your lizards as well. It runs 4 Deep Cavern Bat, probably just because it's a really good card. Gets to see what opponent's in hand, helps you little look. And then we got the Gecko. Flame Cache Gecko. I was looking at it thinking I was saying it wrong, but no, it's Flame Cache Gecko. Lizard Warlock enters if an opponent lost life. You get to add an additional Rakdos mana to this. So you could potentially use that to discard and draw a card, or you can play one of your other spells because there's so many 2-drop costing cards here. And it's good that it adds the Rakdos colours, because then you could play a Fireglass Mentor. You could play a Gev off that as well. If you've got another mana up as well, you could play maybe your Laughing Jasper Flint. This is a 4/3. One of your biggest top-end cards. Creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to other types. Begin your upkeep. X are the top cards of target opponent's library, or X is the number of outlaws. Then you may cast those spells for any mana type as well. So that is a really sweet card. And it's a rare as well. So what I like about this deck, it does have quite a few rares in and not so many of the mythic status. It does run Warlock as well, which is an uncommon. You've seen this in some of my budget builds. But the mythic that it runs in the main board is just Cavern of Souls against all the control decks, and this will choose your creature type, which obviously will be lizards, and then they be lizards will become uncounterable. A fair bit of, well, not a fair bit, a little bit of removal in there. We've got a couple of cut downs, and then we've got 4 go for the throats as well. So if you look at the stats, it's got a 1.9 average. We run 22 lands, and there's 28 lizards of the 30 32 creatures as well, and only 6 non-creature spells, which is those removal spells. So in the sideboard, we will go and have a look. And this is where you come in and you could potentially add in if you do need that extra bit of removal. You've got another cut down in there. You've got a couple of Sheoldred's Edicts, which can help against Planeswalkers as well, because I keep coming across Planeswalker decks and they keep, sometimes beat me because I'm not prepared to beat him, which is when best of 3 decks work out really well. You've got 3 Glistening Deluge, good against toxic decks, anything like that, or just token decks in general. And this will potentially wipe the board for you to... if you're bringing in something like Urabrask Forge, which is just an absolute beast of a card, bringing this in, it doesn't matter because these get sacked at the end. So even though you think this might hit a lot of your creatures initially when you're bringing this in, you've got cards like this coming in as well. You then don't have to worry about doing a wipe because you do the wipe first, potential early wipe, and then you'll be coming in with your Urabrask Forge with that creature that will just keep getting bigger. So not many different types of cards in the sideboard for this, but bringing in for certain different matches. Duress potentially against control or heavy removal rare decks that you bring in and will just hopefully deplete their hand a little bit so you can get your aggro package going. But Lizards, a very fun deck and one that I would like to try. If you've played this, let me know how good it is for you, and let's get on to the next deck. And our next deck is Mono Black Skeletons. So, interesting build. I do like Mono Black decks. I especially do like one of the main cards of the deck, which is Corpses of the Lost. Skeletons you control get +1 and haste. This enters, you create a 2/2 black skeleton token at the beginning of your end step. If you descend this turn, you may pay 1 life and return it to your hand. So, descending is each time a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you get to potentially put this back into your hand. Now, Mono Black, this has quite a lot of creatures in. For a Mono Black deck, 19 is a fair amount, 8 instants, and a fair amount of enchantments, 11 enchantments. With a 2.1 average, it's running on just 22 lands as well, but a nice split there, 19 and 19 for this deck. Has obviously probably still one of the best cards in Standard, Sheoldred the Apocalypse, escaped all the bans and is still here all these years on now. Whenever you draw a card, gain 2 life. When an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. And in the new set that is coming out very soon, Duskmourn, there's actually a red version of this that does the same sort of thing, but doesn't quite drain as much. I think does 1 damage for each time. But that would be an interesting card to be put in some kind of Rakdos deck, but that would be one that we will see potentially in the future. So we're going to have a look at some of the skeletons in here. 1 drops Forsaken Miner, can't block, but it's a 2/2 for 1. And whenever you commit a crime, you may return it as well. Can't block, but going for the aggro skeleton package here. You've then got Tiny Bones Joins Up, and you've got Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. There's quite a few mythics in this deck, so you'd say it's quite a costly build, but the land base is somewhere where you are going to save on this deck, where it's got 20 swamps and 2 uncommons, where you look at a lot of decks in the current top meta. If they're multicolored decks, they'll be running a fair amount of rare lands, but this is where you just basically are going to be putting them into the creatures. But some of the mythics are one-of, like Gissa Hellraiser, Ward, pay 2 life, Skeletons and Zombie get a +1 and have Menace, which gives that great big bump and a bit of evasion as well. So this is just in there at the top end for a one-of. And the Bat God is in there as well. I think the Bat God is genuine in a lot of decks, Mono Black especially, always as one-of. So be able to use that if you want to craft that. You'll be able to use it in lots of different Mono Black builds as well. What else do we have in the deck as well? Case of the Stash Skeleton. So this comes in as 2/1, and then it adds if you've got no suspected skeletons, you then get to sacrifice it and search your library for a card and put it in your hands. You get to tutor up for any card as well. So any card you want to go and find, whether that be one of your corpses generally, or go and find one of your winners like Sheoldred, which is pretty decent as well. It obviously does run a lot of non-skeletons, which is interesting for this build. It is Mono Black Skeletons because the base of the deck is skeletons, but it runs a lot of cards that are just do well with the synergy of the deck as well. So committing crimes like Vladimir. I added in an L into Vadmir's name there. So Vladimir, no, you're Vadmir. Whenever you commit a crime, put a 1/1 counter on it. As long as Vadmir has 4 or more 1 counters, it gets a bit of medicine, a bit of lifelink. So if this can build up against decks like Mono Red or Mouse or decks or anything like that, it'd be very interesting. But I'm feeling sometimes with this deck, like decks like the aggro decks like Mouse, potentially could struggle, but it does have like early removal with cut downs and go for the throw. But I think in best of 3 you won't meet them so much, or you're meeting more of these decks and a lot of some mid-rangey decks. So I think this is why it does so well. Gix with card draw, but you are amassing lots of creatures onto the field, making skeletons, making rats as well, but a lot of them can't block, so you're not using these to sort of put up defenses till you get your late game. You're using it more for the aggro status. And we go to the sideboard. A lot of cards similar to what we have seen in the previous deck here. You've got an extra cut down, we've got Forge Arrest to come into control decks and stuff like that. Liliana, good against control, and just generally, a really good card that can potentially get to an ultimate pretty easy if they've not got that kind of removal. Soul Guide Lantern can attack the graveyard, which is interesting against decks that are reanimating Atraxa decks or anything like that, so that's obviously in there for that sort of deck. And Glistening Deluge, again, just a good early sweeper against the tokens and anything like that, Toxic and generally green-white decks. And then a couple more Gissa, which I'm surprised there's not more than one in the main. I would probably would drop, me personally, I'd take out Alkazov and add 2 of these, but I suppose you've got them in the sideboard to bring in against other decks. But Mono Black Skeletons is definitely one that I'd be interested in. I'm not sure how many cards I'm actually missing. See, I'm not actually missing that many, so I think that would be a decent craft for me. They are rares, 1 mythic as well, so that's actually not too bad, but it's definitely a deck that I think I would enjoy. But let's get on to the next deck. So, of course, 5 colour Domain is a top meta tier deck. It's just got powerful cards. Atraxa, just amazing. Flying Vigilance, Death Touch, Lifelink, 7/7 is just an absolute beater. Reveal the top 10 cards you love. You know how good Atraxa is. And then it just runs a varied amount of, no 1-drops. This is a high CMC deck, 4.3 with 26 lands and just the 7 creatures, because it's running off all those non-creature smells. I said smells. I'm keeping that in there just because it's funny. But yeah, this configuration of this in the best of 3 runs a single Jace, which I like because I like Jason. I think that's an interesting card to have in there because it is a separate type of win con. You're bringing in, doing the -X's, +1 while you can, keeping the board clear. You've got temporary lockdowns, you've got 4 Sunfalls, you've got Leyline. So that single Jace actually can probably get you to a few wins without a doubt. You've still got even more removal, like a single Get Lost, Lightning Helix as well to gain a bit of life against those aggro decks. The one card that I am missing is a 4 of this mythic, Ancient Cornucopia, which I've seen played against me and I just know is a really good card. So whenever you cast a spell that's 1 or more colours, you may gain 1 life for each of the spell colours, and this is really integral to the deck. So if I'm playing this version, I need 4 of these straight in there. I know it because I've played against it, and I know once you start doing this with the colours like Lightning Helix and then like Atraxa coming in, you're just swinging round Archangel of Wrath, Lifelink again, Kicker, black and red, so you're playing multiple colours there. It just turns into a great card. And talking of great cards, Up the Beanstalk, one of the best uncommons from that set, just is an absolute house in this deck. Land base is going to smash on this one. We got 4 Fables, we got like Cavern of Souls, Hedges, like the complete opposite to Skeletons, Commercial Districts, we've just got all of them, and a few little basics in there. You go to the sideboard, good against discard decks. You've got the Baloth that can come in. When you discard, it can just be put straight into field, gaining that 4 life. Negate coming in more control decks and anything that's going to try and stop what you're doing with your Atraxas and stuff like that. A couple more Temple Lockdown against some more aggro decks coming in. And one of the cards that I'm missing as well, which is Tranquil Thrallbreath, which is a card that you do see as a single of in some of them, some versions of this, but this will have 3 in the sideboards. When you may pay like green mana up to 3 times when you do destroy target artifact enchantment, exile graveyards, gaining 4 life. So just a really good utilizing card that just has a lot of abilities that when later game you can get some real value out of that. And then the last card in there is a couple of Planeswalkers, 2 Nissa. Playing all those lands, you get lots of XX tokens you're going to hopefully make, and that is another way to smash down as well. And until end of turn creatures you control get +1/+1 for each forest you control. So very interesting. You got forests here. And it can come in. Commercial, obviously, is a land base that's forest as well, and Port to go as well. So there's lots of forests that will trigger Nissan. This is a very powerful deck that aggro decks can sometimes, they go underneath you, but once it gets towards late game, God, this deck is very, very hard to beat. But let's get on to the next deck. So a deck that you're probably coming across quite a lot in the meta in best of 1 and best of 3 is Boros MIce. Very aggressive. Splashes in white for 3 cards. But you need those cards really because they're just, you've got a couple of really good 1-drop mice here. You've got Cheeky House Mice that's a 2/1 above the stats that you can use the Sorcery Adventure for as well. And then you've got the Sword Master that's a 1/2 but has offspring, so you can play multiple. Get 2 of these in the field potentially as well for turn 3. When this becomes a target spell or ability you control, it gets +1/0 until end of turn. The other one is Mabel. That is the anthem for all of the mice in your deck. Gives them all +1. Enters, create a legendary colourless equipment token, +1/1. And Vigilance, Trample, and Haste. So Crag Flame is a really good part of equipment. I haven't got my... Oh, there we go. It's just for the... Oh, I just got this. Rockface Village. But yeah, so this is a really good aggro deck. You do see this a lot on the meta. This is a very highly played deck. People like it. It's relatively easy to play. You got the hero in there that can be built up with Might of the Meek and Monstrous Rage as well. Prowess with the Challenger. And just one of the best cards, for me, the best card in the deck is the Manifold Mouse. Beginning of combat, your turn, target mouse gains a choice of Double Strike Trample. Double Strike or Trample, and that just is really strong. Especially when you're putting stuff on there like, Might of the Meek. And then it's, you choose your Double Strike, put the Might of the Meek, get the Trample on there, pump it up even more Monstrous Rage. It goes on a Heartfire hero. When this dies, it deals power each to its opponent from its power. So it's just really hard. So if they block it because they have to block it, then they might just die anyway. It's just a really, really strong deck. Rapid Ignore is another way to pump as well. Creatures you control get +1/0 into end of turn. Deals damage equals power to target creature you don't control. But yeah, this is a deck that runs 28 creatures and all of them are mouse. And 12 instances, but 20 lands because this is running at 1.6. Very, very low. Very low. As you can see, the plethora of 1-drops in this deck. But you're really using the few mice that you do have, or mouse soldiers, building them up and then just pumping away and getting in loads and loads of quick damage. Land base, pretty simple. The Boros lands, and then you've got a couple of Rockface that can give something you control +1/0 and haste one of your mouse haste, which is really nice. And then Village as well, sacrifice it, look at the top 6, and you can go and get one of those mouse into your hand as well. Now, when you go to the sideboard, a few different cards here. We've got some really good removal. We've got a Braids in there, Witchstalker Frenzy, so you can swap over if you do need some of your pump spells can go out, and then you need a bit more removal. Get Lost, we got 4 of them in there as well, and there is a couple of Witchstalker Frenzy. So the sideboard is mainly all about removal. Now, another win con that can come in is Urabas Forge, which is so good in certain matchups. So decks that are just mono black or just using reactive removal for your cards, this is always going to be a threat because it's going to be constantly putting down creatures onto there. And then it runs 3 of Case of the Crimson Pulse. Let me know what you think of this card. I've not crafted it, I've never played it. If you have played this one, enters, discard a card, then draw 2 cards, which seems pretty good. Seems very good to me. When you have no cards in hand, it's solved, and at the beginning of your upkeep, discard your hand and draw 2 cards. So a good way to get cards going into a red player's hand. So that seems very good. So I'd like to know how good this with. I'm thinking it's comes in because it's got lots of 1-drops and everything like that, and there will be times where it's quite easily solved. But very interesting deck and very powerful deck, and definitely one that can scoot up the wins. And if you're looking for something to play that's quick games, quick wins, quick losses, this for me is definitely the deck for you. But let's get on to our last deck. So the last deck is a Simic Cookies. Cookies, very fun deck, very cool, named around Tough Cookie. Enters, create a food token. It's a 2/2, target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 4/4 creature until end of turn. So turning those foods into creatures is what you want to do. This has a lot of low mana creatures as well. When you look at the CMC, it's another one that's low, not the lowest. It's 1.9 still, but 22 lands in this. Runs fair amount more creatures, 26 and 12 non-creature spells in this. And when you look at this deck, I'm pretty sure it runs a few mythics in this one. So you do have some mythic crafts in here. You've got 3 Agatha Soul Cauldrons, which is one of the main protagonists of this deck. Spend mana as though it were any mana of colour to activate abilities of creatures. Creature control with 1/1 counters them. Have all the activabilities of all cards exiled with this. So you're exiling creatures, and it's only a tap ability to do that as well. So it's not, you don't have to pay for it, which is really good. So it's a free ability each turn. And then the other one that we'll look at is Surge Engine. this could be great. This really can. It comes down to defender. It's not going to be a defender for too long. You're going to be turning that engine, loses defender, and it can't be blocked with the 1 mana, 3 mana, base power 5/4. It doesn't really see many of people go above that and go for the 6 mana, but maybe in long games it does that. But I've always seen it definitely up to the second level, and then it becomes a massive beater. Look at the other cards in the deck. We've got Spyglass Siren, creating the map tokens, which is what you want to be doing in transforming, either with the Tough Cookie, or one of your cards like Zoetic Glyph in this deck that turns those non-creature artifacts all into 5/4 creatures, and that's where you start the beatdown. If you get cards like Spyroglass going in turn 1, putting the map token down, turn 2, you're maybe playing a Surge Engine, and then with turn 3, you're attacking in with that 5/4. It's just real. It's a real aggro deck, and it really is. It's weird to have it in these sort of colours, but that's what it's all about. Teething Wormlet, it's a 1-drop, 4, has Death Touch as long as you've got 3 or more artifacts, and when an artifact enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. If this is the first time, you put a 1/1 counter on it as well, so it's a card that's going to get bigger. We'll have Death Touch as well with amount of artifacts on the field, and we'll trade off with everything then. Ginger Brute, hasty, can't be blocked by except with creatures with haste if you want to pay the 1, which is nice as well. And then a blue card that I really do like and I'm impressed with in other decks that I've played it in is Mockingbird. It's a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value, so even your opponent's creatures, this can come in. So opponent playing a Sheoldred, you put that in as a Sheoldred, but then it has flying Sheoldred, and you get those abilities. It's just a really cool card for me. What else have we got in there? Hunter's Talent. This instance, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power. So we got some big creatures in here. You got your potential 5/4s with your glyphs, and then this will build up to be a 5/4. So Hunter's Talent can be definitely removal, and the level 2 adding that trample on +1/0 to target attacking creature is a good way to get through with damage as well. One more card to talk about in this deck is Cartsail Larcenist. Flying Wall 1 enters for each player. Choose up to 1 artifact or creature that player controls. For as long as it remains in the edge, they become treasure artifacts. You could even just not even do one of your own creatures. You're going in there making map tokens and stuff like that, or anything like that. Food tokens. This can do that, but then you might be able to get rid of something really important for your opponent. And then the 4 of Sentinel enters and attacks, creating those map tokens, which is your targets for your glyphs and everything like that, and then getting more artifacts to trigger your Wormlet. It's just a deck that synergizes very, very well. You can make artifacts with the rare land, Might, and with Fountain Port, that's definitely going up in paper price. You can make treasure tokens, you can sacrifice one of your tokens to draw a card, so you've got a bit of an engine there. And you got a Vinestalk to attack as a 5/5 creature as well. So very, very sweet deck. We'll have a look at the sideboard here. We have removal in hard-hitting questions, dealing powers. We then have like bounce effects into the Floodmaw, which is a good way to keep it clear in case you haven't got unblockable stuff. More removals. Pick your poison. Sacrifice a piece of sacrifice artifacts, enchantments, so good against this deck. Probably, when it gets against the 3 mana enchantment that wipes our board, literally in this one, as we saw in the previous deck, Temple. This will, is the kind of thing that we need in there to sort of survive again. And then a couple of more Tishana's Tidebender, flash, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. So a bit more of the control aspect if you need this to come in and help out. It also runs 3 Haywire. When it dies, you gain 2 life. Coming in against more aggro decks, I'm guessing, save against mono reds, the mouse decks, get a little bit of life back, and you can also sack it to get that life if you need it to exile target non-creature or non-creature enchantment. So a nice bit of removal there, tricksy stuff in there that you can bring in against various different matchups. And the last card is Repulsive Mutation. X1 counter target creature card, then counter up that target spell. It's a card that doesn't get played much, but I do think it's a very fun card, and for uncommon, I'm quite happy to see a couple of them in the sideboard. But that has been 5 top tier 1 meta decks for best of 3. Let me know what you think of all these decks, which ones you think you're going to play, which ones intrigue you. If you're building them, I suggest building towards, playing the colours or the types of decks that suit your play style first. And if you're missing maybe a couple of cards, put in the comments down below. And if you want some suggestions for what maybe could take the place of some of the cards while you get the other wild cards or while you build them, you know, I'm always free to that, and you know, I'll always reply to every comment I can down below as well. But thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, like I said, please give it a big thumbs up. It really does out. And if you're here at the end still, you're an absolute legend. Let me know in the comments. I actually do appreciate that so much. But you gotta take care, and I'll see you on the next video.